Shalom. All praises, blessings, glories, and honors to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone, who taught me this truth, as well of men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy, to the elect of the nation of Israel, Woma Yisokwa Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom, beginning with the 144,000 prophets, and Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, willing. This lesson is edifying and informative. Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 1. But to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Verse 4. A time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. Verse 8. A time to love, and a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. In the news from the RT, among a few others. Prepare for war with Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, UK Defense Minister. Now, we are already in the beginning stages of the Third World War, which comes quickly, according to the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 14. For the past couple of years, we have been hearing of wars and rumors of wars and seeing proxy wars between Russia and the U.S. through NATO. And we understand, according to biblical prophecy, that the Third World War will be fought in the valley of Jehoshaphat, which in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh's judgment, located in the Arabian Peninsula. It is also known as the Battle of Armageddon, which the word Armageddon means mountain of troops, because that is where the various governments of troops of the different heathen nations will be gathered together round about to fight the Third World War and to receive their judgment in the form of destruction by the hand of our Lord, when he returns to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. In the east. So what we are seeing are further build-ups, but before the Third World War really pops off, for the lack of words, the MOTB, which is the RFID microchip, also known as the NFC chip implant in Europe, also known as the biochip implant. The word bi means living or alive. Also known as the brain chip implant, i.e. Elon Musk's Neuralink, must first be mandated after further being introduced across the globe. Because believe it or not, many people still do not know what the mark of the beast is, but very soon they will, if they don't already. And so once the MOTB has been mandated across the globe, which is the goal of the elites of Esau Edom and their New World Order, that is when the Thurwells will maximize. The least of the flock will continue to gradually, until eventually America Babylon the Great gets drawn out into the Middle East to be a complete guard unto it, which the it is referring to the state of Israel, who is the least of the flock. And Lord is willing, you brothers and few sisters are still following. I know it's a long introduction, but it's necessary for edification's sake and setting tone of the lesson so that you may be able to follow along. Lord is willing. Once the least of the flock draws America, Babylon the Great out into the Middle East to become a guard unto it, Russia will then become a guard unto Iran and its allies. These things are important for us to understand because they are a part of biblical prophecy. So now that we understand these things, for those, especially for those of you out there that are new, let's read the article. Grant Shapps wants Western nations to increase their military spending ahead of a possible conflict. British Defense Minister Grant Shapps has predicted a global conflict between the West and Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea within 5 years. Within, keyword is within 5 years, so-called 5 years, because we understand that the Lord is hastening the day for his elect's sake. They have an agenda to accomplish within that time frame. These Edomites, Shapps has called on Britain's allies to increase their military spending in response to this so-called existential threat. And this is an example of nations beating their plowshares into swords and their pruning hooks into spears. And that is to say, take their economic wealth and use it towards the research, development, production, and enhancements of weapons of mass destruction. In particular and primarily for ICBM nuclear missiles, which according to Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 25, are the weapons of the Lord's indignation, which means his righteous anger. In his first speech as defense chief on Monday, Shapps described the UK as a leading global military power, citing the country's record £50 billion or $63 billion defense budget, its recent airstrikes on Houthi forces in Yemen, and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's announcement of a £2.5 billion, equivalent to $3.2 billion US, military aid package for Ukraine last week. Shapps vowed that he would further increase Britain's military spending. So many countries are turning their economy into a war economy, so to speak, because we're in a season of war. And it's the reason why these nations have been beating their plowshares into swords and their pruning hooks into spears. Why they've been waking up the mighty men. Because very soon, all the men of war will be drawn near to the valley of Jehoshaphat. And they will go up to the valley of Jehoshaphat to fight the thorough as well, after the mark of the beast has been globally mandated. Because that prophecy is it has to happen, it has to come to pass, and it will come to pass. It's what we're looking for. Let us not forget the famine of the word, Jacob's trouble. This is the hopefully year of Jacob's trouble. Persecution. So the Lord is moving quick, man. Things are moving quick. And we are static, man. We static. Oh, man. Lovely times we are living in. All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Chakudash. Let's go. It says Shaps vowed also America's allies turning against America. So many, hey man, look, it's clear. It's clear that we are at the end, okay? Shaps vowed that he would further increase Britain's military spending and that he would use our influence to ensure other allies and friends match our commitment. In 5 years' time, we would be looking at multiple threats of conflict, including Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, he said. Ask yourselves, and by the way, expect to see tensions rise in the Pacific around Taiwan between China and the U.S. And also expect to see a spike in energy prices. Ask yourself, looking at today's conflicts across the world, is it more likely that the number grows or reduces? I suspect we all know the answer. And by the way, Nero looks like he's gonna be getting back up in there. It's likely to grow. So 2024 must mark an inflection point. Read more. UK to send 20,000 troops to NATO war games. There's enough troops. It says the UK spends more than 2% of its GDP on defense and aims to increase this figure to 2.5%. Shaps said NATO requires that its members spend more than 2%, but only a third of the bloc's 31 members actually meet this requirement, according to a NATO report released last summer. Shaps is not the first senior UK figure to predict that the country would soon be involved in a large-scale war. Britain's Chief of the General Staff, General Patrick Sanders, declared in 2022 that there is now a burning imperative to forge an army capable of fighting alongside our allies and defeating Russia in battle, and that preparations must be made to fight in Europe once again. The battle's going to be fought primarily in the Middle East because that's where all the men of war are going to be drawn. Not to mention Gog and Magog has the largest stockpile of nuclear warheads. They also possess the most destructive one, the Satan II, formerly known as the Tsar Bomba. So Russia could literally wipe an entire nation off the map, literally, with just one bomb. But we understand, according to biblical prophecy, those missiles are going to be shot over here into America, Babylon the Great. It says, however, the UK's allies have doubts about Britain's fighting ability. Early last year, a senior U.S. general told Sunak that Washington considers Britain barely a Tier 2 military power, closer in stature to Germany or Italy than Tier 1 powers like the U.S., Russia, China, or France, Sky News reported. While Shaps said he aims to turn the defense tank around with sustained spending hikes, the British military ended 2023 with its lowest number of active duty personnel since the end of the Napoleonic Wars, and ammunition stockpiles so depleted that it would reportedly run out of artillery shells after 22 hours of full-scale combat. The American general who spoke to Sky News estimated that it would take the UK between 5 and 10 years to build a new war-fighting division of 25,000 to 30,000 troops backed by tanks, artillery, and helicopters. And the men today are as women, and women as men. Speaking to reporters after his speech, Shaps did not elaborate on how a potential conflict with China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea could develop. And we understand how it's going to all develop according to the scriptures, according to prophecy. He said that the whole purpose of this speech today is to ensure the whole of NATO does indeed share that burden by upping military expenditure. And according to biblical prophecy, America's allies within the NATO and the EU will betray America, Babylon the Great, according to Revelation 17 and the book of Obadiah. Okay, the 10 toes breaking apart. Daniel's, what is that, the fourth chapter? Forgot it off top, Slovakia. But the Lord is speeding this thing up, man. Okay, in other reports, which I'm not gonna read. I'm just gonna read the title. Pakistani retaliatory strikes in Iran kill at least 9, raising tensions along the border. So Pakistan retaliated with strikes, that is airstrikes against alleged militant hideouts outside of Iran on Thursday, killing at least 9 people as it retaliated for a similar attack by Iran 2 days earlier and rising tensions between the neighbors at a time of escalating conflict in the region. In other reports from the Sputnik, Ukraine on the brink of a coup as Zelensky leads country to ruin. Former Ukrainian diplomat and whistleblower Andriy Telizhenko joined Sputnik's Fault Lines program Wednesday, speaking powerfully about the heartbreak he feels as his country loses people and territory in an unnecessary conflict. Ukraine is losing and losing by hundreds of thousands of people. The men and women which are dying and which have been killed, that is already a big loss for everybody, said the former Ukrainian government official, the hosts Chamar Thomas and Mikhail Abdul. Ukraine is going to lose more territories if this attitude continues to fight and fight and fight. He doesn't even want peace, referring to Zelensky. He doesn't even talk about peace, said Telizhenko of the country's current leader, President Vladimir Zelensky. This is a hard break for me as Ukrainian. To say that we might lose our country because of the people who are in the government today in Ukraine, the regime which is killing its own people who wants to fight for peace, which is killing its own people, throwing them to the front lines against Russia, one of the strongest armies in the world and a nuclear country. The ex-diplomat says Zelensky's increasing unpopularity, and it's a fight between the U.S. and Russia. Really, that's all it is. It's just a proxy. That's all that is, man. But they gotta, obviously mask it. Increased unpopularity at home and in Washington could lead to his ousting as early as this year. We'll see. Time will tell. It says there might be a coup in the spring of this year in Ukraine, coordinated by the West, changing Zelensky as the president of Ukraine with somebody like military chief Zaluzhny or somebody else out there, said Telizhenko. We'll see. Speculating the regime change could even result in a civil war in the country. America does not always understand what's happening within Ukraine, even though they're trying to control it, he added. And I think that's what's going to happen. Above all, Telizhenko lamented the tragedy of Ukrainians being killed in a war they don't want to fight, effectively being sent on a suicide mission to battle against a more powerful army without a proper training. People are being thrown from the streets, the buses, he said. Ukrainians don't want to fight, and their law are being broken by throwing them to military camps and then throwing them to the front lines right away without any tactical experience at all. They basically made a boot camp out of Ukraine, he said, not letting any men and women out and throwing them to the front lines without any experience, just to make their owners in Washington and deep state happy. And this is going to continue to happen as Boris Johnson, who you mentioned before, promised to fight until the last Ukrainian. And that's what they're doing right now, keeping that promise, fighting to the last Ukrainian man and woman. Look, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll leave the rest in the description box of this lesson. Lord's willing, it was edifying and informative. Again, let's read Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 8. A time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. So right now we are in the time of war and not in a time of peace. We are in a time of hate and not a time of love. How do you know this? Because our Lord told us in the book of St. Matthew chapter 24, verse 12, that because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. What is iniquity? The stacking of sin. What is sin? 1 John chapter 3, verse 4 tells us that sin is transgression of the law. Okay? So, war is in the air. Okay? War is in the air. Revelation chapter 11, verse 14. Then we will close the lesson. Nabaratazah. It says, the second war is past, and behold, the third war cometh quickly. So the third war's war cometh quickly. Right? A war that will be fought with burning and fuel of fire, according to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 5, and Malachi chapter 4, verse 1. So with that, I say shalom to the elect. Lord's willing, this lesson has been informative, edifying. This has been another in the news. Shalom.